Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no comments on this, Chiefs. I want to start by thanking the FCC for its work to address predatory prison phone rates. Each of you has publicly stated in your support for clarifying the FCC's legal authority to end the gouging of vulnerable families. To keep things simple, if any of you no longer supports these efforts, please raise your hand. Great. For the record, no one raised their hand. Chairman Pai, yes or no? If your intra-state authority is clarified, will you reaffirm your commitment to exercising it expeditiously?
Yes.
Thank you. That's good because yesterday, Senator Schatz, Markey, Portman, Booker, and King joined me in introducing the bipartisan Martha Wright Reed Just and Reasonable Communications Act. Our targeted bipartisan legislation would permit the FCC to use its traditional procedures and authorities to end unjust and unreasonable rates, thereby keeping families together and enhancing community safety by reducing recidivism. The bill is actually named in honor of Martha Wright Reed, who for years struggled to keep in touch with her grandson while he was in prison. As is often the case, her grandson was moved repeatedly while incarcerated, from Virginia to Ohio to Arizona to Kentucky to Pennsylvania, and this made it impossible for her to make in-person visits. As is common, phone calls quickly became the primary method for their family to keep in touch. Her fight for affordable phone rates lasted more than 20 years, but led to the FCC's interim rules implemented by former Commissioner Clyburn, who supports my legislation. And today, Mrs. Wright's grandson, Eulandis Forte, is with us in the audience. Wave your hand. Mr. Forte, I want to thank you for your family's dedication to this very important issue. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Forte recently wrote about his family's experiences and the importance of addressing this issue, and I request unanimous consent that his op-ed be entered into the record. Thank you. Sorry, I should have said committee chairman. My partisan legislation enjoys the support of nearly 100 civil rights groups, technology organizations, phone companies, law enforcement entities, and experts. Yet some who want to protect their golden goose argue that eliminating predatory phone rates and fees will impact public safety. Commissioner Rosenworcel, there's nothing in my bill that prevents law enforcement from receiving fair compensation for the cost of offering and managing inmate communications. Instead, my bipartisan bill clarifies that inmates and their families should receive just and reasonable charges, drawing on Section 202 of the Communications Act. And these are not radical ideas. Would you agree with this assessment?
I would totally agree with that assessment.
Thank you. The simple fact is that our prison phone system suffers from a market failure. Families are forced to pay outrageous charges because locational monopolies are protected from marketplace competition, even as new technologies lower costs for providers. Again, Commissioner Rosenworcel, today's inmate communications providers use advanced technologies to cut their costs while maintaining the highest levels of security. Do you agree that my legislation makes clear that the obligations of fairness and just and reasonable rates apply to all inmate communications, regardless of technology used?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Achieving just and reasonable intra-state prison phone rates is not rocket science. We know it can be done because states like Illinois are leading the way. Over the last decade, the price of a 15-minute in-state call from an Illinois prison has dropped 98%. So it went from $16.41 for a 15-minute call to just 14 cents. The same goes for out-of-state calls in Illinois. A final question, Commissioner Pai. Minutes ago, you reaffirmed your commitment to acting expeditiously if you were given authority to address intra-state calls. But the FCC can also do more to enforce its existing 25 cents per minute out-of-state rate caps that went into effect more than 2 years ago. Rates at some correctional facilities still far exceeds that limit, and when you factor in excessive fees and kickbacks that do nothing to enhance security, the price skyrockets for struggling families. Will you commit to meeting with me and some of the advocates I've been working with between now and the end of the year to discuss both out-of-state and in-state inmate communication costs? And I'm happy to host it.
Senator, I would be happy to meet with you, and I would also point out that under my leadership, the Commission blocked a merger of two of the leading providers in this area precisely because we thought that would cause a concentration in the marketplace that would end up raising rates even further. So I share, obviously, the goal that you have identified in your remarks.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to include in the record letters of support from numerous stakeholders who support my legislation.
Without objection. Thank you.
as well as some additional documents that have to do with this issue as well.
Is there objection? Without objection. Senator Thune.